Hello, Garland Nixon here. And we've had a week and a half now to not just think about the results of the election, but to listen to the recriminations in the Democratic Party leadership. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. Excuse me, I'm still clicking away and getting everything straight. Okay, let's talk. So a week's gone by, and a week and a half or so, and there are two things that I'd like to discuss. Number one, the results of the election. Number two, the recriminations, the weeping and gnashing of teeth of the leadership of the Democratic Party, of the mouthpieces of the Democratic Party on TV, online, etc. And what's it mean? Because certainly after the beating that they took, there needs to be a very, very serious discussion in that party about why they lost. And I think the problem is right now, as I see it, is they can't have an honest discussion about anything. Let me start here before we even get to the election. Over the last few years, since 2022, just an example, the Ukraine conflict, right? This is the pattern. And I put it to you like this. If you read psychology, if you understand psychology, a lot of times you'll find that people do the same thing over and over again and it doesn't work for them, but they just keep doing it because that's all they know how to do. Somebody whose father or mother or whatever did this in a relationship and they grew up seeing that. And then they don't even realize they're doing it, but they just repeat what they saw their parents do. And it doesn't work. And it makes their life a living hell, but that's all they know. And they don't even know they're doing it. They're not living their life. They're running out of program. As an example, I remember when I taught, when I used to teach junior college. And I remember, I'd have these conversations when some days we'd have a test and I'd have conversations with students. And I remember one student talking about, yes, when I get in a relationship with a boyfriend, she's like, yeah, I'm a pretty young girl, right? She's like 19, 20, whatever. And she's like, I get in a relationship and then I find somebody that I disagree with. And then we go back and forth and I win and then I win. And I'm like, and what do you win? You're in a relationship. What are you trying to be in a win-lose relationship? It's supposed to be win-win relationship. And in listening to that person, I realized something. That's what she saw at home. She saw her parents argue, and one of them had to win, and one of them had to lose, and therefore she was going to grow up. She was already starting to grow up, and she was simply repeating the same pattern over and over. She didn't even know she's doing it. And that's one of the things I think it's important. It's one of the things I try to do in my life, right? I try to look in the mirror and I try to see where am I mirroring what I saw with my parents, good, bad, or indifferent. What am I doing? I don't want to just run a blank program where I do the same damn thing over and over that I saw parents or adults or teachers, whoever do, and my life is not even my life, right? I think it's important to do that. To have an introspective view of what am I doing? Why am I doing that? Right? So I say all that to say this. For the Democratic Party, let's turn them into me or you. They have to look at what they've done and say, did that work? What were the results? Do I need to do anything different? Why am I doing this? Let's go back to Ukraine. I've studied Ukraine, Russia, as I've told many people. I started probably studying Russia stuff in the early 2000s. I met Paul Robeson Jr. We became friends. He was kind of mentor. He grew up. He went to school in the Soviet Union. He went to elementary school in the Soviet Union. He spoke fluent Russian, and he had cultural connections and family connections. And I thought that was interesting. And I started studying stuff about Russia and the Russian sphere and all that stuff. Okay. And so I learned a lot about it. And so when the Ukraine conflict started, I knew about Russian culture. When I started hearing about Russiagate, I knew about Russian culture, and I said, that doesn't seem to match Russian culture. None of this makes sense to me, right? And as the Ukraine conflict went on, the story, the narrative that I heard didn't make sense. It was simply, you've heard them all. Oh, Putin invaded it because he wants to expand the Soviet Union. And I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't align with the rhetoric and the history of Vladimir Putin and the current leadership of and then I looked at all of the other stuff. I'm like, but the Pentagon wrote this document in 2019 about unbalancing Russia, and whoa, wait, let me read that. Holy crap, it says they're going to use Ukraine against Russia exactly like they're doing now. So I looked into all the details, and I said, their story doesn't make sense. It's bull crap, right? But they could not deviate from that story. Why? It was a narrative. It was a story. It was a myth. It was a means to an end. They couldn't tell the truth about why the Ukraine conflict was going on and what the U.S. part in the conflict was. They were trapped in a narrative. If they told the truth and let the cat out of the bag, people would condemn them and say, well, that's not right. That's wrong. And if Russia did the same thing in Mexico that you're doing in Ukraine, you would do what Russia's doing, probably sooner or worse, right? So I realized more and more that the Democratic Party under Biden, what it is now, where it is now, they're trapped in it. Maybe in the past, I don't know, they probably were too. I don't know. Maybe all parties are. I'm just saying, for the purposes of this particular discussion, that I recognize that they were trapped in a narrative that ironically, paradoxically, they felt that this narrative was giving them control of the situation. They could use this narrative. They could lie to the American people. They could control the American people. They could lie to the European people about what they were doing, why they were doing it, who blew up the Nord Stream, etc., and get the European people to go along with them. So from their perspective, we have a weapon, we have a tool, and the tool is that narrative. They talked about the information war. We're using the information war, right? Full spectrum dominant. Those were tools that they felt they were using themselves to accomplish certain things, right? The old, we're going to rule the world, Pinky in the brain, right? What are we going to do today, Pinky? The same thing we do every week. Come up with a plan to rule the world, right? Okay. Their perspective was, this narrative is our tool, and we're going to use the tool to accomplish our goal. As you probably, people who know me and people who study philosophy, etc., probably already know how I'm going to flip that. When that happens, you end up a prisoner to that narrative. That tool, you start off, I'm going to use that tool, and that tool is going to be used to accomplish a goal, and it's a powerful tool, and man, that tool is mine. That weapon is mine. I always say, like a pet werewolf. You got a pet werewolf. Oh man, that werewolf can tear everything to shreds. That werewolf's powerful. That werewolf is really something else. Werewolves don't make good pets. I mean, if you believe in werewolves, certainly I'm being facetious because I like werewolf flicks, but you get my point. Because they don't listen well. You got a Cujo, a mad dog. It's great. He'll tear your enemies apart. But he'll tear you apart if he gets a chance because he doesn't listen. Okay. A narrative can be like that. A narrative is something that's powerful when you use it. But if it's a false and fake narrative, it's got holes in it. At some point, you become a prisoner of the narrative. And they became a prisoner of the Ukraine narrative because they were never going to win. And as I watch it, I'm like, let me look at history of the Russian military and Russians as warriors. History tells us Ukraine don't have a chance. You don't want to go fight Russia on Russia's border. You're going to lose that. So I'm like, what the hell kind of narrative is it? But they told them, we're going to win. They had this powerful narrative. Little did they know at some point the narrative turned inside out and they became prisoners of the narrative. Okay, all that, here's where I'm going. The last week I've seen the same thing because they couldn't come out. Here's what they couldn't do. Here's what could not happen after the election. The Democratic Party and its people could not come out and say, we lost because of the way we ran the country. We lost because of our politics. We lost because we were out of touch with people. We lost because of the way we governed. Our politics, our thoughts, our beliefs, our political inclinations drove us to govern in a particular way. And the way we governed has been rejected by the American people, right? What did they? Now, here's an example. And you always hear this from political parties. We changed our message. We've got to change our message. Our message was wrong. I've heard this from the Democrats. Our message, we got to change our message. What are they saying when they say we got to change our message? Here's what they're saying. Top-down governance. Here's what I mean. In theory, government, as we're told, right? Bottom-up government. The large masses of working class people and working poor and all these people out here are the ones that drive policy. We put you in, you represent us, we drive policy. You don't need a message. We give you the message. We say to the government, here's what we want. We want you to look out for the working class people. We want whatever. We may want this or that, more of this, less of that, whatever. But we give you the policy. Your policy is derived from the fact that you represent us. So it's in our best interest. Boom. Right? So you don't need a message. You get the message from us. And the message that we get is we're doing what you want. Yes, we are. But because of the nature of the US politics and the fact that the US is not a country, it's an empire, the policies that the party is putting forward is not in the best interest of the working class. Now you need a message, and they readily admit it. We need to change our message. Why? People didn't vote for us based on the current message. Why? Because people didn't vote for us based on the way we governed. But we can't say that because the people who pay us to govern this particular way. And if we get back in power, we will do the same damn thing again, because that's how we eat. That's how we get paid. That's how we make our money. That's the nature of our party. Now, I know what people are going to say. The Republicans are Trump. I'm not having to discuss about that. Please don't be in the chat. But Trump's going to do, but Republican. I don't understand some people's brain where they can't talk about any particular thing and focus on that thing without saying, what about something over there? I'm not talking about that. This is an evaluation of the Democrats. Okay. So rather than discuss how they govern, which they can't, because if they discuss how they're governed, that they would have to determine that we got to govern a different way. And if you're being paid by people and the way you're governing, basically the way you're governing is based on who's paying you and what they want, you can't go change that because you represent the ruling elite. And to change government with the governance methods would mean you're no longer representing the ruling elite. So what do they have to do when they say we're going to we need to change our message? They're just saying we need to change the narrative. It implies that there's an implication. It implies that the people out there don't understand. Again, it's condescending towards the voters. We need to change our message. Why? Because they don't understand that what we're doing is what we should be doing, and they should support it, right? You're still saying the voters should support us. If they only understood better, which they don't because they're stupid and we have condescension towards them and we're very much elitist, and these poor little dummies out there don't have the intellectual wherewithal to figure out what's in their best interest. And even if it's not in their best interest, they should do what they're told. I would argue this. To some extent, they're not even arguing that their method of governance is in the best interest of the masses that rejected them. They're saying the masses should support us, whether or not it's in their best interest, because we're the ruling elite and they should know their place. That's really what it comes down to. I don't hear them saying what we're doing works for them, is better for them, they're going to be better off, they're going to be happier. Because that's the message. If that's the message, then tell them how they're going to be happier. Tell them what they didn't say that. We need to change our message. Why? Because we told them this is what we're going to do, and they rejected it. We need to change our message. Are you saying you should lie to them? Because that's pretty much what you did, and that didn't work. So it's a very elitist message, which also says you can't be fixed. If you just need to change their message, what happens if the people are smart enough to figure out they're being lied to. Now, you can talk about Trump and the Republicans all you want. The fact of the matter is, if you look at Europe, if you look at um, England, right? They hated the Tories. Oh my God, they've made a disaster. And they voted in Keir Starmer and that group of neoliberal mutts. And they got the same thing. And now the Tories, what are they going to go back and forth? Then the discussion has to next go to a system has created no alternatives, which is a system that is which is a recipe for a revolution from the bottom, right? When you start talking about the Republicans, and I say the Democrats, they're terrible, their brand is done, it looks like a clown show, and you say, well, the Republicans are the same thing, I say, well, thank you for coming over to my side. Now, what does that mean? Where do you go from there? You need systemic, revolutionary change, however you want to put it. But when someone argues that the Republicans are as bad as the Democrats, I simply say, sure, I'm not going to argue that. Then what? Does that mean, well, the Republicans are just as bad as the Democrats? Does that mean, and that's like some guy says, will you go for a date with me? And the woman says, what, you're a filthy old scraggly guy. You haven't combed your hair, haven't brushed your teeth, your clothes are a mess. No, you're a disaster. And the guy says, yeah, but that guy over there that is asking you for a date, he looks just as bad as I do. And she'll say, yeah, I ain't going out for either one of you guys, right? That's what she's going to ultimately say. Forget it. I don't want either. It's not like she's going to say, oh yeah, that guy is pretty bad. I guess I'll date the guy with the bad breath, the bad hair, and the bad clothes, as opposed to the guy over there with the bad breath and bad hair. No, she doesn't want that. And she shouldn't have to settle. Don't ask her to settle because you're wasting your time. And now, every time somebody says, but the Republicans are, people simply say, there are people that say one or two things. Anything's better than this. At least I'll give it a try, and then I'll figure out that it's just as bad. But right now, you're so bad, I'm willing to try anything. Or they'll say, well, I'm going to stay home and not vote because you're right. They are terrible. And so are you. So I'll vote third party or stay home and Rick leaves on November 5th. That's where we were. It's not an argument. It's not even a defense. It's not an assertive defense. When somebody says your party's terrible, to say the other party is, that's not a defense, right? You're just saying that's a deflection. Hey, your party's terrible. Yeah, that guy is too. Fair enough. Your party's terrible. Yeah, but what about Trump? Yeah, he ain't that great. What about your party's terrible? And you're just pointing around. That guy's Miss Project 2025. And you're pointing all over the place, but you've never addressed the issues at hand. And so let's go to one of their other claims, right? Their other recriminations. It was racism and sexism. So what do you say? Let's double down, right? Let's, again, if Kamala Harris lost because of racism and sexism and things of that nature, right? Then what you're saying, you're making another claim, a culty kind of claim, to be quite frank. That kind of exposes the Democratic Party as a cult. And here's why. If all of you got lost in a landslide, you got smashed, crushed, destroyed, obliterated, as Trump's favorite word, obliterated, right? Okay. If I lost, the question becomes, can I do anything else that'll help me win, right? If I played a guy one-on-one basketball and I lost, we played a one-on-one for $20 and I lost. Can I practice and get a better shot? Can I practice my dribbling? Can I improve my game and go back and beat him? Or there's nothing I can do because he cheats? I could say, well, he won because he cheated and the ref cheated. That means there's nothing I can do. I don't need to go back and get in better shape and practice my shot and improve my dribbling. And I don't need to. Why? Because it's not my fault. There's nothing I could do. It was out of my hands. He cheated. The refs cheated. Everybody cheated me. And it wasn't my fault. And it was raining. Well, wasn't it raining for him too? Yeah, but that's beside the point. Everybody helped him and I lost. I don't need to change. It wasn't my fault, right? It was racism and sexism. Number one, I don't need to change. There's nothing I could have done. Number two, the people that didn't support me, didn't vote for me, didn't show up, are morally inferior to me. See, now it turns into a cult. My group, which obviously is the smaller group, we've been rejected by society, is the moral group. We are moral, we are righteous, we are good. The people that didn't vote for us because they're racist and sexist. Well, that's bad, isn't it? That's immoral, isn't it? So now you have made an argument for which there is no political answer. If my group is morally superior to everyone else, what's his name? Jonathan Capehart, right? A guy, Washington Post, um, MSNBC, just the kind of guy that MSNBC loves, right? Oh, they just love him. He checks the boxes. He's black and gay, right? He's the complete and total sellout for the working class. He goes along with any narrative that he's told, right? And I'm watching Capehart, and he says this, you know, maybe it's not that it's the party of Trump. I think now maybe it's the country of Trump. This is Trump's country. The America's changed, and quite frankly, I don't like what it's become. So now, according to him, the Democratic Party is a minority, a moral and good minority in an evil country. Talk about a cult-like behavior. Our group is small. Our group is getting smaller and smaller, but we're the good guys. And now the country is changing for the worst. Good, honest, moral people like us, we're falling into the minority. This country is going bad. It's turning evil. Really, what's your evidence, Jonathan Capehart? Because they won't vote for us. They won't support us. They don't think we're right. Now, since we know we're moral, we know we're right, and we know we're good, we know that. That's axiomatic. That goes unsaid. It's self-evident. We're the good guys. And we've been soundly rejected by the majority of the country. That can only mean that the majority of the country is evil. No, that can only mean that you're in a freaking cult, brother. That's what that can mean. You are in a cult, and this cult is getting smaller. The smaller a cult gets, the more intense its belief gets that it is right and moral. That's one of the things I see in the Democratic Party. You know, I've told people, when I was teaching in the police academy, I would always tell, you probably heard it, I would always tell this story. I would say to the recruits, look, let me warn you of this insular thinking, of this myopic thinking, of this cult-like thinking. It never stays the same. It gets worse. And it starts like this. We're the police. We're the good guys. And everybody out there, these dirt bags, they're the bad guys. And then it becomes, our police department is the good guys. And the rest of these departments are kind of questionable. Then it becomes, you know, the guys on my shift are the good guys, and the rest of these shifts, I'm not sure about these. Then it becomes me and my partner, we're the good guys. The rest of the people on my shift, in my district, I don't know about them. Then it becomes, I'm the good guy. I'm not sure about my partner. I think he's questionable. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Beware of looking in the mirror and seeing yourself as moral, as the good guy. I've always argued this, made this argument, that we as human beings, you know, we have good things about us and bad things about us, right? And the person who acknowledges that I can be the nicest, most wonderful, kindest person in the world, and I can be the rottenest bastard on earth. Every human being has that ability to be both. When you acknowledge that, you're less likely to be the rat bastard. Once you come to grips with the truth that, yeah, I can be a rat bastard or I can be a good guy, then you're less likely to be that, the bad guy, because you know it's there. You accept that reality and you don't get caught in this moral righteousness, this piousness. Well, how dare they not vote for me? I don't like what this country is becoming. Why? Because it doesn't agree with me anymore. So it must be evil. But once I say, I always got to keep a watch over myself because I know I could be a bad guy too. I'm human. I could be evil or wrong or terrible, bad guy. You got some protection from that, because if you start to go astray, you can look in the mirror and say, yeah, it wouldn't be right. And I know I'm only human. I can do bad things. But once you become pious, righteous, self-righteous, moral, dare I say, you've jumped the shark. You're on the way downhill. Right. And so when I hear Jonathan Capehart tell us that he doesn't like what America has become, why? Because America doesn't agree with him on numerous things. Then America is now evil, and his party, his group is getting smaller and smaller only because they're so good. You know what it gets? It gets pure. It's more and more pure. A cult purifies itself. A cult begins to say, yes, we're the good guys. And then they look at some people who say, well, you know, I'm a member of this cult, right? The Garland Nixon lovers cult, right? Yeah. You know, maybe Garland isn't an angel of God who's come to save us. Oh, you question whether the cult of Garland Nixon is pure? Out, away, off with your head. And bit by bit, anybody who questions it, anybody who says, perhaps we should look at what we're doing, maybe it isn't purpose. Oh, you question it, and it just gets smaller and smaller and more pure till the only thing left is the true, absolute believers. And at some point, there's like one guy left, right? That's the Democratic Party. That's where they're going. It's getting more and more pure. Anyone in the party who says, you know, can we ask about the way we govern? Oh my God, you're a Trumpster. Perhaps I should. We saw it during COVID. There were people who had been Democrat, who were progressive, left-leaning people who would say, I got some questions about the COVID narrative. You're a Trumpster. People who would say, look, I don't have anything against gay people or anything like that, but, you know, maybe, I don't know, drag queen story time. Should we have a discussion about whether that's good or bad? It's okay. We can talk about that. I'm not saying I hate gay people, but I think we need to talk about of maybe is it in the best interest of children? I think it's fair to have a discussion. Right? That's all. Oh, how dare you, you gay-hating scumbag, you, out of the party with you. Well, at some point, because you refuse to have discussions, you have to label a person who says, I want to have a discussion about this issue. Maybe even within this party, we can have some disagreements. No, we can't. Only the pure of heart, because this is now about morality and goodness. And because you're not pure of heart, you got to go. Well, at some point, you get the outcome that they got a week ago on Tuesday. At some point, you get so pure that people they hate the stench of purity because it's self-righteousness and piousness, and it becomes like a religion. And I believe that based on what I hear, the Democratic Party is becoming like a culty religion. Look, I turn on, and I'm going to get back to the narrative issue. I turn on The View. And I see, you know, this people of MSNBC, and I see people literally saying, you know, if you have a family member that voted for Trump, they're not pure. They don't have a right to your presence. Really, who should I hang around on a day of celebration that would normally be with my family and loved ones? Well, clearly, I shouldn't hang around people, even if they're family and loved ones, who voted for Trump, or maybe didn't vote at all, maybe voted for Jill Stein. They're all evil. I'm on the side of good. Anybody who didn't vote for Kamala is evil, you know, or just didn't vote at all. They're all evil. They're all on the side of evil. Didn't vote for Kamala. You vote for Kamala, you're good. Otherwise, you're evil, right? They don't have a right. Think about the way they put it. They don't have a right to my presence. Well, excuse me, the effrontery to exist. I don't have a right to your presence. This is terrible. I don't get to be graced with the presence of this moral entity here. A right to my presence? When I say, if I go to visit family and we sit down and we have a dinner, aren't I lucky that I get to associate with my loved ones? Lucky me. No! That's not the way you look at it. Lucky them. They don't have a right to your presence. They literally, I heard people say this kind of stuff. What have you becoming? It's very cult-like behavior. A purity test. I've heard people say things like, oh, yes, I don't want to do business with people who voted for Trump. I don't want blah, 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 blah. Again, it's cult-like behavior. It's a purity test. It's kind of sick. And these things they make up. Why'd you lose? Because I've heard this. There was, after, how about this? After 2020, Trump was an election denier, and you literally prosecuted Donald Trump. They literally prosecuted Donald Trump because he said and he thought that he didn't win. He thought he was had in 2020. Whether he was or not is irrelevant. The hallmark of a democracy is the ability to argue and to after an election. Are there avenues after election? Are there legal avenues that you can take to protest and make sure if you believe that it wasn't a fair and free and fair election? Are there avenues? And Donald Trump said, I don't think it is. You can agree with him or not. He had a right to do that. There's legal avenues that he can pursue, and he pursued some of them, and they came back and charged him with a crime over that and said he didn't really believe it. Now, after the Democrats get plastered, whitewashed, crushed, I hear some of this. Well, I think there might have been things going on with the ballot. You lost in every state, and you get it. But Donald Trump was wrong for thinking that he didn't win, and now you friggin' got destroyed, smashed, obliterated. Hey, we lost by 4 touchdowns in a game of in a game of football. Really? Why do you think you lost? The ref stole it from us. He didn't score a single point. Yeah, but that's irrelevant if the ref stole it from us. It's not a realistic view of politics. And yet you went after Trump because he was an election denier. An election denier, and now they only want to accept it. There's some that will accept it and some that will never accept it. No, we couldn't possibly have lost. That's preposterous. Thank God there's not many like that. But now they're caught in a narrative. In the same way in Ukraine, they had to say Ukraine's going to keep winning, even though, like, anyone who knew anything about history and anyone who was looking at the reality on the battlefield was like, well, isn't Russia 26.5 times bigger than Ukraine? I don't think they're going to win. Hey, Garland, who are you going to fight that guy? He's 26 times bigger than me. Maybe not. Hey, Garland versus an elephant. Who do you think's going to win? Garland's going to jump in the water and fight it out with a blue whale. Who do you think's going to win? I don't know. I think Garland's going to win. And blue whale's fighting with shovels, and it's out of missiles. It was never logical for them to argue that Ukraine was going to win, but it was a narrative that they had to use in order to get the schlubs like us to go along with this. To fly a blue and yellow Ukraine flag, oh, plucky old Ukraine, and then they made up absurd stories every other week. Oh, the Russians are out of missiles and fighting with shovels. But all they had was a narrative, and they had to run with that narrative. They had no alternative. They were trapped by it. Now that they lost, all these things are narratives that they're trapped in. They're trapped in the narrative. The alternative is reality. The alternative for them with Ukraine was to say it's inevitable that Russia's going to win, and there ain't a damn thing we can do to stop them short of going in and fighting Russia on its border, which means we'll probably lose also, and we'll end up in a nuclear war and we'll all die. So we got to ask ourselves, is it worth it? And how did this all happen? How did this thing start? Who armed Ukraine? Who armed them to the hill? Who moved into Ukraine and started building bases and missile firing stuff and set Ukraine up for war and started digging trenches and started arming guys who were goose stepping around yelling Sieg Heil? Who did that anyway? Perhaps that wasn't the best move. Nope. Couldn't do that because we were trapped in a narrative. We couldn't let the truth come out. Now, the Democratic Party, people who are making unthinkable amounts of money off of what do they call them? The something class, but people who are making unthinkable amounts of money off of these elections and all the corruption going on within the bowels of the Democratic Party can't come out and cut off the gravy train and say we did things wrong. And they know that they're billionaires. If they say, well, perhaps we should have stopped did something about the Trump tax cuts, and their billionaire donors are going to say, oh, no, the hell you shouldn't. And what are they going to do? But we'll lose. And their billionaire donors will say, yeah, but I'll still have my tax cuts. I ain't worried about you losing, bro. I'm trying to make hay here with this money. So they're trapped in a narrative because of what they are. They have created a party that enriches I'll put it like this. It's neoliberalism. In the same way that the system of neoliberalism takes all the money out of the hands of the working class, working poor and poor, and puts it in the hands of the rich. The Democratic Party simply reflects that system. It absorbs money out of, and it absorbs all the power from their vast constituency, and it takes that money and power and concentrates it into the hands of a few rich donors. So they are neoliberalism. They are the embodiment of neoliberalism, and they can't do anything otherwise. Now, if somebody argues so is the Republicans, that ain't an argument. Particularly in the context of this conversation, it's not a relevant argument. Well, you're an alcoholic. Yeah, but there are other alcoholics out there. Well, you ain't arguing that there ain't. In the context of this argument, you've lost your job, your wife, your kids won't speak to you. You're living in your car, and you got to go to court. You got 3 DWIs. Yeah, but there's people out here that have 4. Well, yeah, but that ain't going to help you, is it? So now they're in a situation where they're trapped in a narrative after losing. I don't see how they get out of this one, because what's happening is this. Let me put it to you like this. You have to have a political foundation to your ideology, and you need to be able to share that. Neoliberalism is the opposite. You can't. I ain't saying the Republicans are in the same boat. Yeah. But I'll put it like this. They share, they're more to share, more like for this reason. They share their ideology. Yes, we're going to steal from the poor and give to the rich. They just argue that that'll help out the poor. That's it. Yes, what are you going to do? We're going to austerity for the poor, more tax cuts for the rich. And what's that going to do? That's going to help the poor and the rich, everybody. Well, it doesn't, and we know that, but the Democrats don't do that. They can't share their ideology. So what the Democrats say is, we're here to help out the poor, and that's what we're doing. And then they're more prone to lie. They got a plain flat out lie, more so to their constituency, because their constituency wants something very, very different and has a different view of the world and a different view of what government should be doing. So they have to say to their constituency, the government is going to assertively do something to help you. The Republicans can say the government needs to do less for you, and that'll help you. And that's that's neoliberalism in a nutshell, right? We take money from the rich, we take all the power from the poor, and we concentrate in the hands of rich, and then you'll be better off. Well, it doesn't work, but that's the argument, and they go with that narrative because it is, in fact, what they do. Just don't work. The Democrats say that doesn't work. Fair enough. And we're going to do something different. Fair enough. And then they do the same thing. And they just try to paint it differently. The Republicans, we're going to go, remember Trump? We're occupying Syria, and we're going to take their damn oil, and we're going to occupy countries, and we'll attack them and blow them to hell and take their stuff. That's piracy. The Democrats, we're going to go to this country, and we're going to stand up for the women in the LGBTQ community, and we're going to bring them democracy. We're going to do all these wonderful things. You're going to do the same damn thing as the Republicans. You're going to steal their oil. You just got to lie to your constituency because your constituency ain't down with it. And now they're caught up in that narrative and those lies. And bottom line is this. A big part of their problem is war. They don't have a constituency that's down with war. They have a constituency that's more peace oriented. Now have they changed it somewhat? Have they lied some of them into it? Have they misled some of them into this liberal interventionism? Right? They didn't say, well, we've got to defeat Putin. They said, well, we've got to save Ukraine. Oh, those poor little people. And right, it's couched in goodness and kindness and doing the right thing. Oh, poor Ukraine. They're defending themselves. Don't you want to help defend themselves? How? By getting them all killed. But their narrative is, we're going to help the Ukrainians. Problem they got is war spending is foundationally inflationary. So you're driving up inflation. That over the course of time, as the truth through alternative media starts to bleed out about the Ukraine war, your constituency starts to drift away. As people struggle, and this was huge. This was a big problem for the Democrats, and they can't possibly admit this or talk about this. And I heard this from people, and you probably did too. A big problem for them. They're just another war party, and the war party is a lot of money laundering, right? We're going to send all this money over to Ukraine, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do with it, right? And you had a bunch of people saying, I'm hurting economically, and I need help from the government. Even if they don't help me, I don't want to see them blowing money on something stupid when things are going bad here, right? And so the Democrats, the Biden team, would say they brag about it on the news. We're going to get another $60 billion to help Ukraine defend themselves. We're going to send in another $8 billion. We're going to send all these billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine. And what people heard was, money's going over there, and we need it here. Right? I knew they were going to lose Pennsylvania and Ohio. Why? East Palestine. It was on that Pennsylvania-Ohio border. And people were like, okay, we've had a train derailment with all kind of poisonous stuff. And Biden was in Kiev. Literally, he didn't even come there for weeks. He was, we got to go to Kiev. Why? Because we got to get money to them. What about us? Like I said, I'm off to Kiev. People understood what was going on there. It infuriated them. You're not pulling your way out of that. And the Democrats were still caught in a position where they couldn't say, we made an error. They couldn't say we lost because of our policies of spending all this money on war. They become a party of war. And that's who they are. And they enrich people, and they enrich the ruling elite who make money off of war, which includes Wall Street, which includes the military-industrial complex. They align themselves with the worst warmongers. Why? Because that's who the party is now. It is the party. In 2016, when people said, "Are you going to vote for Hillary?" I said, "No." They said, "Why?" I said, "Let me explain something to you. When I go to vote and I go get in line and I look over there and there's, whoever, there's the CEO of Goldman Sachs standing in line, and there's Bill Kristol standing in line, and there's Max Boot standing in line, and they're all voting for the same person as as me. Yeah, I'm getting the hell out of that line. I know that they're not voting for anybody who's acting in my best interest. So now that you've got Bill Kristol and Max Boot and all of those people, you ain't got me. You can change your party so that you get these people. It's your party. That's up to you. But you can't make me stay in that party." So when they started by realigning with these people, yeah, they could do that. But what are the consequences going to be? Because what they needed to do then was keep all of those people, because that's who their party is, but they need to reinterpret their policies in a way that would appeal to me, that would appeal to the working class, the working poor, their traditional constituencies. They just lied. Indeed, let's be simple about this. They just lied, and it didn't work because people were dealing with their material realities. So you see, a narrative is not about material realities. It's about, what was it, Socrates and Plato or whoever it was, or Aristotle, whichever of the two it was, and their argument about reality. Is reality what you think about and what you believe, or is reality what you can touch? I can touch this stone. Is that reality? Or are my thoughts about that stone? What I believe it to be purple. I can discuss that stone. Is it really purple? Or is that, well, that's lights the light is hitting that, and then it's reflecting off of that in a certain wavelength, and then my brain touches it, sees that, and a human nervous system creates purple, right? What is purple? Purple is created by a human nervous system interacting with particular wavelength of light, right? And we can discuss which is which, but I can take this stone and not knock you in the head with it, can I? So there's a discussion about reality. And when the Democrats were stuck in that discussion about reality, is reality the narrative that we tell you, this is in your best interest and this is what you should do, blah, blah, blah. The narrative, the discussion, the thoughts about the wavelength of purple, or is it that stone that I can take and hit you and bop you in the head with? If I hit you in the head with that stone becomes a material reality to you, right? So they could talk to the public in all of these philosophical ways about the economy being good because they have particular economic indicators that say it's good, and they can, the economy's great. But the poor guy who's got to feed his kids has to deal with the material reality, and that is when he walks into the grocery store, there's the prices. And you know what? When he walks into the grocery store, you ever seen a sign that says, for white males, here's the price, black males, females, this group, that group, different prices for different groups? Nope. Everybody that walks in there got to deal with those prices. That is a material reality. And the Democrats have moved to a narrative reality, right? To a reality of discussion and thoughts rather than material reality. And guess what? The poorer you are, the less you have, the more you are trapped in your material reality. The more money you have, think of Maslow, the hierarchy of needs, the pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid the hierarchy of needs. The bottom of the pyramid, the foundation of it is, do I have food? Do I have air to breathe? Can I survive, right? The top of the pyramid is self-actualization. What is self-actualization? That's about a philosophical discussion. Am I happy and why? What kind of things do I want to be? Am I accomplishing something? Am I part of a group? Do I feel like I'm leaving a legacy, right? If you're starving, you don't care about that crap. And when they talk to people about we must stand up against stand for democracy around the world, and it's going to cost us untold billions of dollars. Okay, that's up at this hierarchy of need things. We must leave a legacy of standing up for democracy, which is bullshit anyway. But my point being this, that person's like, but I can't afford a head of lettuce. They're trapped in a material reality. They don't want a discussion about standing up against for democracy around the world, which is all lies anyway. They just don't want to hear it. Well, there's race and sex and this and that. They don't want to hear it. Well, you can't vote for Trump because he's a racist. I know black folks that voted for Trump and they said, he may be right. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. They don't care. Their material reality was what created their need to take action. Well, things are too high. Maybe this will make them cheaper. That's all they cared about. The reality of buying that head of lettuce, as opposed to the philosophical discussion about what is democracy and what is authoritarianism and should we intervene in other countries because we're changing the way people live and think. And people are like, but I'm here. I need you to change the way I live. And the Democrats can't do it. And so the discussion would come back at some point to war. War to you is something that you're doing for this international worldwide ideology of yours to run the world. War to me now that I'm Joe Poor guy who's trying to survive is money that you are spending on something that should be spent on that damn lettuce I'm trying to buy. Help me out. Don't help out the next man. Don't stand up for a philosophical, ideological things around the world when I need to buy a head of lettuce and I can't afford it. And they can't have that discussion because it would require a discussion about their policies and which policies should be changed. And they can't do that because they are ideologically, they have it has become a neoconservative, a neocon, a neoliberal party to its core. And the neoconservative, neoliberal party to its core cannot alter course. It can't have a discussion about altering course. It's become a cult. It cannot entertain the possibility that they're wrong. If you are the Pope, can you have a discussion about whether or not there's a God? Can you have a discussion about the Bible? What is that real? What about all these other books that were thrown away? What do they mean? Is this really the word of God? Well, wait a minute. If Jesus was right here and he was talking to somebody, to God or whatever, who wrote that down? Who was there? Somebody wrote it down, but they were the only two there, right? So those are questions that are valid questions for some guy who's an atheist or doesn't believe in God. And he sits down to the Pope and says, I want to have these questions. But the Pope can't entertain those questions, can he? Because he is ideologically trapped in his religious belief, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not trying to denigrate anybody's religion. I'm just saying sometimes there are reasons that people can't talk about anything, that they're trapped, that they're strongly and firmly trapped in a way of thinking. And my point being, the Democrats are there. And you can't talk about the Pope about whether God exists. And you can't talk to the Democratic leadership about whether they should go out around the world bombing and starting wars and intervening in countries so that they can stand up against authoritarianism and stand for democracy when it's all a lie and they ain't standing up for authoritarianism. I mean, against authoritarianism and for democracy in the first place, when it's all a lie for imperialism. They want to go around the world and rule the world so the US American companies can dominate and get cheap resources and keep everybody else under their thumb. And the rest of the world ain't gonna buy it. And if you don't support it, they can't do it because they're not in power. Now, the Republicans simply understand something. Maybe we got to give you a crumb, or we got to at least pretend or argue to give you a crumb. Trump at least talks the language of the common man. Okay? Trump speaks the language of the commoner. You got to start there. You got to do a Bill Clinton. What did Bill Clinton say? I feel your needs. He was a neoliberal scumbag, but he said, I feel your pain. He said to the people, I understand you're having problems and we need to do something about it. Well, he did. He handed everything to the rich and, completely did away with the New Deal, all the New Deal. But his rhetoric was a rhetoric that the working class accepted. The problem is this: the Democrats are now in a position where, because of their actions, nobody's even going to believe them if they change their rhetoric. Have you heard the old saying, what you are is screaming so loud, I can't hear what you're saying? So they're in a position now that people know who they are. People saw him for 4 years. Trump's going to eat you, send you back to slavery, beat you. He's going to do everything. He's going to start World War III. And what are you going to say? Well, Trump was president for 4 years. Do you know what, I've had people say, do you have any idea what Trump's going to do over the next 4 years? And I was like, yeah, I really do, because he was president for 4 years. Based on that, I got a pretty good idea. He'll aggravate the hell out of liberals with his tweets. He will go after immigrants. Biden went after immigrants, so he pretty much do what Biden did as far as immigration. He will tax cuts for the rich and all the stuff that the Republicans' usual stuff that they'll do, and he'll aggravate the hell out of the liberals, and yeah, that's what he'll do. No, he's going to kill you and murder you and slaughter you. I'm like, meh. He was there for 4 years. He didn't do it before. I kind of hard to believe that he's going to do it now. I could be wrong, but based on his historical context, I got a pretty good idea who this guy is, right? The Democrats were in for 4 years and they did everything wrong. And guess what people are going to say when they go to run again? Based on who they are. I mean, if the Democrats come and say, now in 2028, let me tell you what we're going to do. We've got a diverse group of female candidates, and you're going to be like, okay. At this time, we've got a trans candidate. And what they're going to do is help the little guy. How? Well, for starters, we're going to have lots of wars. I mean, no wars. And then we're going to invade countries. I mean, we're going to help countries come to democracy, and we're going to stand up for this and that. None of the bad stuff we did before, all good stuff, relabeled for you now. People are going to say, you know, that sounds good. But you got a body of work, right? I've had people say to me, yeah, oh, my old girlfriend, we broke up, or boyfriend, whatever, and we're going back. We're going to give it a shot. And I say, you know what? You ever that's like opening a refrigerator and taking out some milk. Open it up. Ooh, oh, crap, that stuff's, rancid. I can't take that smell. I know. I'll put it back in the fridge. Maybe it'll be good in a couple of days. I'll check it again. Yeah, that ain't happening, right? So now, in the midterms, and 4 years from now, the Democrats will say, okay, trust us this time, Charlie Brown. We ain't moving the football. We're there for goodness this time. You got a body of work. It's going to be difficult after this body of work. What the Democrats, their 4 years was so bad. It was so horrible to many of us. Now, to their core constituency of the woke, and but the Democrats are good and everybody else is bad. They're good. Fine. Loved it. But to the masses, they pissed so many people off. They upset so many different constituencies. They lost people. COVID, mandatory vaccines. There were a lot of people afterwards. You know, one of the least likely groups to go along with that with Black males. Is it an accident? I don't know. Did that contribute to a lot of Black males leaving? Why? Why is it that a lot of Black males weren't? Well, there's a historical context there that certainly makes sense. And that was the Tuskegee experiments. A lot of Black males are, shall we say, reticent to accept help from the government, or at least mandated things from the government like that because of the Tuskegee experiment. And they're like, man, this is a government that literally did Nazi-style Joseph Mengele, angel of death kind of experiments on the Black population. Not just those guys. They let it spread throughout the population, right? Syphilis. So there's a lot of Black males, when they said everybody's got to get the jab, a lot of Black males were like, I don't know about that, right? There was a historical context there. Whether you agree with them or not, there was a historical context. And a lot of them said, nah, I'm scared. I ain't going to do it. Right? There was no trust there, right? Historically speaking, you got to understand that. It's a reality. You don't have to understand it. You don't need to understand it. That don't mean it ain't a reality. Okay. That could very well be one of the factors that caused such an astronomical percentage in relative to the normal percentage of Black males that vote for the Republican. The numbers was astronomical. Some states 1 in 4, some states 1 in 5. I think the mandates could have been something that drove a lot of people away. Maybe not. I'm just throwing it out there. I think it's a possibility. Of course, economics. The fact that Kamala Harris is a prosecutor. You're gonna run a prosecutor. You know, that ain't going to go well in the Black community are good. Again, a lack of trust for the system, a lack of trust for the criminal justice system, right? So the Democrats did everything wrong. And every time I turned on Kamala Harris, you know, I'm a prosecutor. And as a prosecutor, I was a prosecutor. And people are like, Kamala was a prosecutor. Nope, sorry, you pushed away more of a group of other groups of people who ate down with prosecutors, right? So bottom line is this: they did a lot of things to push a number of groups away that normally vote for them, and they paid a price. They lost a lot of groups, and not all of them didn't vote for Trump. A lot of people just stayed home because they felt like there was no place for them to go. And you know what? Here's the thing. Okay, if you're a Democrat, losing a vote that you can't afford to lose is going to hurt you. But then think about this. If someone from your traditional constituency votes for your adversary, you just lost 2 votes. That's a vote you would have had and a vote that they did get. So you lost 2 votes. You're in deep trouble. You lose 10,000 votes. That's the equivalent to 20,000 votes because you're 10,000 votes lesser and they're 10,000. So if both of us would normally get 1 million votes, okay, or let's say both of us would normally get 100 votes, right? And 10 of my voters go over to you. You now got 110 and I got 90. I'm 20 votes in the hole. Right, so it doubles down. So when traditional constituencies went to the Republicans, the Democrats lost twice. And then, of course, they had the people that stay home. There was no, if you watched my channel or listened to me on the radio, I saw no universe in which Kamala Harris had a chance. And let me add this. They ran a candidate that they couldn't be honest about. They had to pretend that she was smart, that she was a good candidate, but yet people looked at her and you're hiding her. We juxtaposed the evil, stupid, crazy, dementia Donald Trump against the brilliant, young, intellectual Kamala Harris, and the narrative didn't match the reality that we saw, right? I remember watching Saturday Night Live, right? Well, I don't watch that crap, but I saw a skit, and they were doing Kamala and a skit with Kamala and Trump, and so this was the thing. Kamala mumbled something, and they said, "Oh yeah, that was joy or something," whatever. Their word salad they didn't understand. Ha ha ha. And then Trump mumbled a bunch of stuff, and they said dementia. In other words, Donald Trump's dementia. So the argument, Saturday Night Live, and again being at the forefront of pushing the narrative, was pushing that Donald Trump had dementia, which means that Kamala Harris doesn't. That's what you argued. Then I watched Donald Trump, and does he babble on? Yeah, no different than he always babbled on. I look and he's like, yeah, he doesn't quite have as much energy as he wanted, but he's just sitting there bullshitting. Like what I used to say, like when I'd be standing outside in the yard with my dad in his pickup truck, and one of his buddies would pull up and they'd lean against their pickup truck. You know how guys do. Lean against the truck and start babbling and bullshit. Yeah, them sons of bitches. And they talk about whatever, right? And I'm used to bullshitters. Most guys my age, middle class, whatever. I mean, middle-aged guys, whatever. However, age, young, old, middle, wherever you want to put me, we can look back and we can remember our dads leaning against a pickup truck or something, or a tree, bullshitting with some guy. And we look at Trump and we're like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Just talking shit. Yeah, I'm used to that. That doesn't sound like dementia to me. That sounds like God of guys I know, right? And so they told us he had dementia because he was just, and then we had to watch Kamala. And we're like, we knew she couldn't go on Joe Rogan. We knew she was not intellectually capable of doing it. Let's be honest. She was not intellectually and or emotionally capable of doing it. We watched weird things. She'd talk and just start cackling. And we're like, that doesn't seem normal. There's something wrong with that woman. There's something wrong with her. And then we'd be like, I'm listening to her talk. Yes, the significance of America and democracy is that Americans have hopes and aspirations. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I don't know what you're talking about. Again, every time you start talking, I ask myself, what the hell is she talking about? I don't know. I think she's an idiot. I know it makes people uncomfortable. I say it on my radio show in DC and Pacifica. I say, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. She sounds like an idiot. I'm sorry. What other word am I going to come up with? Well, perhaps she's intellectually challenged. No, she sounds like a fool. So now I got to listen to Trump, who just sounds like a guy that was bullshitting in the back in the driveway with my dad when I grew up, talking about whatever they were talking about, the game. My dad liked baseball. They're talking about the Orioles or something, or some car that was broke down and they had to pull the starter out of it and put a new starter on it, or his shotguns. Well, I was hunting the other day and I jammed up, so I decided to go out and get me a new Remington 1100. Whatever. That's the kind of stuff I heard, right? Okay, that when I hear Trump babbling, it makes sense to me. I've heard that before. Maybe not necessarily. I'd like to have somebody a bit more intellectual as a president, but I get it. He's shooting his shit. And then I listen to her talk about the significance of dreams and aspirations of Americans. And I'm like, that sounds like elitist bullshit and babble. I don't know what she's talking about. I think she's a fool. And I walked away at the end and I said to myself, the Democrats have run an incoherent, babbling idiot and tried to convince us that she was that she was the second coming of what's her name, FDR's wife, right? Eleanor Roosevelt or something, who was a brilliant woman and believed in things and had a backbone and went out and did stuff, right? That's what I'm supposed to believe I'm looking at. And instead, I'm looking at the character that Lucy would play. Oh, Ricky. No, it doesn't work. And I won't be gaslit like that. And now they are in a position where they can't come back and admit it. They can't come back and admit that they ran a flawed candidate. They can't come back and say, we probably should have chosen some. No, they got to talk about the details. Well, Biden should have got out earlier. Yeah, like 8 years earlier. No, perhaps if he'd have stayed in a little bit longer. And I heard Nancy Pelosi saying, well, if she'd have got early, we'd have had if Biden had got out earlier and we'd have had a small primary, Kamala would probably still would have won that. And then she would have probably still lost to Trump, but it would have been closer. Oh, so now you're arguing for a closer loss. Hey, you know what? Fair enough, we lost, but it should have been a closer loss. Oh, there ain't no second place in this race, my friend. Either you lose or you take your ass home. And we should have. And now, here's the thing. We should have, but you didn't, did you? Why? Here's something, Nancy Pelosi. You didn't do that. Why? And what did you do? You want to answer those questions? You didn't do that. Why? Because you're trapped. You're trapped in this thing where all you can talk about is and define yourself by your moral uprightness. Because you use pronouns, you're morally upright. Because, yes, he, they, she, he, whatever. Because of that, it's not just we should do that to respect other people. We should do that because we're morally upright. It shows how moral we are. And if you don't do it, you're immoral. Drag queen story hour is great. And when the person says, well, I want to have a talk about whether or not it's all that great. Well, then you're immoral. If you question us, you're immoral. We should have that discussion. The Democrats can't have that discussion because they've staked that as the place of a moral high ground. And now they're trapped in their own morality, which is exactly what happens with a cult. A cult ultimately gets trapped in its own narrative, and it gets trapped in its own morality. It gets trapped in its own belief that it's the good guys. And now the good news is you can be the good guys. The bad news is Trump beat the hell out of you. And if you play this role in 4 years, you'll get the same thing from J.D. Vance. You're done. If we survive another 4 years, I didn't even know if we will. And you know what? Let me tell you something. If Trump is able, when he comes in, if Trump is able to somehow get a deal in Ukraine, which I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he does it. If he listens, I'll put it like this. If Tulsi Gabbard is in, because she tweeted something a while back about Ukraine has to be neutral, right? If they're ready to go that route and say, we're ready to accept your neutrality in Ukraine, they may be able to get a deal, to be quite frank. The Russians are not unreasonable. And that's, look, this is about protecting their border. If they're willing to have an honest discussion about international policy and security and indivisible, as the Russians say, as international law says, indivisible security, where I'm secure and you're secure, they could get a deal. I don't know that they can or can't. I think, they can't, but I don't want to say can't, because based on the neutral, I think if they start with Ukraine being neutral, they can work towards a deal from there, I think. But the Democrats have to oppose it, don't they? The Democratic Party has to oppose that. Think about this. If Trump goes out and says, I'm almost this close to a deal with Putin where we can end the Ukraine conflict, we don't have to spend any more money on it, and we can go on about our business. Most of the American people will say, thank God, I was afraid I was going to get nuked. But the Democrats have to say, we oppose it, we'll fight it, we'll do everything we can to stop it. We no deals with Ukraine, with Putin. He's evil. And even though the American people will be like, yeah, well, whew, dodged a nuclear bullet that time. Way to go there, Trumpy. And in fact, even a person like me, I'm not in favor of Trump. I'm far to the left of both parties, as you know. But the next thing that would happen is this. If Trump gets a deal in Ukraine, you know what? His approval ratings will go through the roof. If they ask me, I'd say this system is screwed up. The whole system is screwed. It can't be fixed. It's blah, 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 blah. What do you think about Trump? Well, he just got a good deal. He got a deal with Ukraine and ended that war. Yeah, I got to give him a thumbs up for that. Good work, old Trumpy. Because now hopefully we won't get nuked, at least not by the Russians, maybe by the Chinese or something. You're really asking for trouble. But I'm just saying that's one nuclear bullet out of the chamber. Who wouldn't say that? The Democrats, they got to fight it and push back against it. And what are they going to run against that in 4 years? We're running against Trump. Why? If you put us back in office, we'll go back to Ukraine and start this war up like we should, and we'll get Putin once and for all. People will be like, oh, okay, well, I'm voting for J.D. Vance in that case. You telling me you want to go back to Ukraine and fire that war up again? Don't they have to run on that? Can they very well say we screwed up in Ukraine and it's good we're out? No. Well, we need more war. What are they going to do? Send Bill Crystal out there to show their anti-war bona fides? They're trapped. They're done. They're screwed. And I guess I think that's it. I think that's my evaluation of things. They're trapped. I don't see a way out. I don't see a way for them to fix it. I don't see a desire for them to fix it. And they would have to admit, look, it's like an alcoholic. If a person is an alcoholic and they go to those, what are the meetings called? Alcoholics Anonymous, right? My understanding is, I think there's like 13 steps or whatever. I don't know what they are, but I think if I recall, I think one of the steps is something like admitting or a couple of the steps somewhere in there is admitting that they were wrong. And I think they have to go back to people that they screwed over or screwed with and apologize or something, making amends. It's a good thing, right? Anybody in life should do that. If you screwed over somebody in life, it's a good thing to go back and say, hey, man, remember when I did this or that to you? Yeah, I just want to apologize. I was wrong. That's big. It takes strength to do that. It takes emotional strength for a person to go back. It's a character building thing. And once somebody does it, it makes them a better person and a strong person, right? The Democrats would have to come back and say, look, when we told you we wouldn't allow you to have a discussion about whether some of the cultural issues that we have are right or wrong and refused to discuss them, we were wrong. We're open to discuss them. When we said, hey, man, we really want this war with Ukraine and we got to stand up for the Azov battalion, you know what? We should have listened to the American people who wanted out, right? That's what they'd have to do. Man, my name is Joe Biden and I'm a waraholic. They'd have to do that stuff and hold up a candle or something and figure a way out and make up for their. They can't do that, because that would be to abandon the ideology of who they are. It would be like asking a bird to land and say, what do you think, bird? I must apologize for flying and having feathers. No, that's the nature of being a bird. Why would he apologize for that? In the same way, the Democrats can't apologize. They've been working. Look, 1984, they got destroyed. 1985, they started the Democratic Leadership Council, the DLC. Look it up. What was the DLC about? It was about turning the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. Who paid for the DL? Who sponsored it? Chevron. I think the Koch brothers. So all of these big money sponsored a Democratic initiative, the Democratic Leadership Council, which was neoliberalism. It was to turn the Democratic Party economically into the Republican Party. I got good news and bad news. The good news is you got what you wanted. The bad news is you got what you wanted. Thanks a lot. My name's Garland Nixon. Share this on all your social media platforms if you can afford it. Buy me a coffee, Cash App, Patreon. Buy me a coffee is always easy because all you got to do, it'll say, buy Garland a coffee. How much? $5. Oh, okay. How many coffees do you want for Garland? 1, 2, 3, whatever. And buy me a coffee is now like Patreon. If you choose, you can become a monthly subscriber or whatever the hell it call it. And you can say, I want to do 5, 10, 15, whatever you want a month to help the channel. So whatever you can afford. I'm doing this full time, as you probably know. I worked for Sputnik, and we got sanctioned out of business by the Biden administration. So this is what I do now. So if you can afford to keep the things going, I certainly appreciate it. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. I was doing it already, whatever the hell. I'm going to do it, whatever, because it's just who I am. Just like a bird flies and a fish fries, I get on the damn on the computer and run off at the mouth, and I just love it. And a couple people out there kind of enjoy it too. Thanks a lot. One thing for sure, you can agree with me or disagree with me, but you know I mean what I say. And I think that's really what people want. I think that's why they're abandoning the mainstream media, because they're like, hey, you know what? I can turn on Garland and disagree with him, but at least he means what the hell he says. Oh, you know what? I better check, and I got to start doing this. If there are any super chats, damn it, if there are any super chats, I better answer them. So far, I don't. Ooh, I see a couple of super chats, and I'm going to make sure from now on I've fallen off and that I answer them. Sean Marco says, came in late, but enjoy your live stream. Thanks a lot. You know, ain't much to my live stream. I just freaking sit here and stand in the camera, run off at the yap. I don't know if there's really much to that, you know, but hey, it's just like hanging out with a friend on the couch. Thank you very much, Ava, session 7 for the super sticker. And that's it. Thanks a lot. Let's see. I'm going to Rumble, and I'm going to see if there's any Rumble rants. Oops. Are there any Rumble rants before this thing gets out of hand? We got to find out before this thing gets out of hand if there are any Rumble rants. Go to my Rockfin peeps might have something to say too. If I could ever figure out how to do anything, I don't know what's going on. Rockfin, nope. So I'll just say somebody in Rockfin said, I won't even watch this kind of nonsense, but tell me, did Stone in the series with Trump completely frighten back into line with the assassination attempts by the deep state? I doubt it. I don't know. Somebody said I couldn't even get past the first 20 minutes of this pie in the sky video. Yeah, Scott Ritter's. Oh no, that must have been something else. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. Let's see. Meet the new boss. Same as the old boss. The U.S. West use Ukraine like Jeff Epstein. I get confused sometimes when I read these comments. I can't make sense of them. Some of them are kind of like, you know, maybe they're talking to each other. I don't know. Interesting. Let's see. Let's read. Someone says, no, Garland, she needs training on public speaking without a teleprompter. No, you can't fix that. She's an idiot. You can't train an idiot. And an idiot is going to be an idiot. But thank you very much. That's what I think. I think she's stupid. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes people don't want to ever admit. We always got like, well, that person is so-and-so challenged. And well, perhaps she could be trained a little better. Kamala Harris is a friggin' moron. I'm sorry. Maybe it ain't nice to say that, but sometimes I've known people in my lives, and we all have, that were just stupid. I may be one of them. People may say about, you know, one thing about that Garland, you know, I like him. He's a nice guy, but he's an idiot. If I'm an idiot, so be it. But I'm just saying, Kamala, if I'm an idiot, Kamala Harris is in the club. Let's see what we got here. The silver lining with the Trump presidency may be there will be less tolerance for the genocide in Western Asia when it is Trump doing it. Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, the liberal class is going to suddenly find their, as they say, they're going to find Jesus all of a sudden, right? They're going to suddenly say, yes, drop more bombs on the Palestinians. Wait a minute, who's sending the bombs? Trump. Boo! Free Palestine! That's what the liberal class. So these people that have been like beating up the protesters, they're suddenly going to all turn into free Palestine people, from the river to the sea people, now that Trump's in charge of it. Guaranteed they stand. These people stand for nothing. I guess that's it. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms. Peace. I'm out.